So I went to college, not in a conventional way. When I graduated high school, I was tired of school. I did not want to do another 2 years, another 4 years of studying. And I would say it wasn't just studying or doing classwork and homework. It was more, I don't think I was ever a fan of doing work that I didn't feel had a purpose. Busy work has never been a thing that I saw value in. As a kid growing up, I had chores, and I understood the value of those chores. Whether I was paid for those chores or not, in the scheme of life, I understood what keeping my room clean meant to the overall value of my experience, of my household experience, of my life experience. It was work ethic. It was, I didn't want to live in a freaking sloppy, nasty, dirty space. So having a clean room wasn't just something that my parents said, shows appreciation for, the things that I have in my house. It literally was something that I wanted to exist in. I wanted to exist in a clean space. And then once I got a job and I started to purchase my own things, I wanted to keep my things nice. I wanted to keep my technology clean and working. I took pride in, and I don't even want to say pride. It's like I spent my hard-earned money on X, Y, and Z. I want it to work as well and look as good as it did for as long as possible. So there was a personal investment that there was actually, I found worth in the work that I was doing. Keeping my clothes clean and doing laundry, cooking food, making sure the bathroom was clean, raking the lawn, mowing the lawn, cleaning the pool, stacking firewood, like the chores that my brother and I had to partake in, I saw and understood and agreed with the value and it aligned. It had purpose. The purpose was it meant something. I understood it and I agreed. School to me in a lot of ways at a certain point sounded and felt like busy work. It felt like these are things in my everyday life that I'm not going to have any use for. And I'm doing these things for somebody else. It didn't seem like it had a purpose to me. Up until, depending on what your field of work is, math to a certain degree, you're only going to use a certain level of math, depending on what your job is. I think it's good to be able to know how to manipulate and use the English language and read and understand it and actually be able to write and communicate effectively. That makes sense. Science, biology, chemistry, physics, a general working knowledge of those things is good unless you plan on actually pursuing something in those fields specifically. I think there's, getting to the college level, it certainly doesn't seem purposeful unless you're doing something in a field that requires those specialties. But when you're in high school, or when you're in junior high and then you're in high school and then even going into college, these are classes that are required. In high school, you're paying with your time, but in college, you're actually paying money. And I just, again, my entire life, I've never saw or never observed or understood or agreed with purposeless work. Right? I think it's a waste of time. I could be more productive doing something else that actually has value. Now I start out that way because I'd like to, I've been thinking a lot and seeing a lot of posts and things on the timeline, and just different shows that I've been watching speaking about, issues dealing with this year's election, things going on in America as far as our economic system, certain policies that in general across the last few decades, few election cycles, have been common themes amongst candidates, and things that people, kind of taglines that people put out there to say, oh, we should have this. And one of those things is that I'm referencing is free education. There's a lot spoken about tuition forgiveness, and there should be no tuition in regards to students and college and things of that nature. And I started looking up statistics in regards to, wages for college graduates versus cost of a college education, unemployment rates for college graduates versus unemployment rates for just high school diplomas, so on and so forth. Just kind of Googling and searching, and, because depending on the institution and depending on the purpose of the article, these numbers can be skewed. You can manipulate statistics, and I think I've spoken about that in other podcasts where, whatever you're looking for a statistic to support, you can find somebody who's done a study and manipulated the numbers to support whatever your argument is. So I don't want to try to even legitimize my argument with those statistics, because my own view on those is if I look hard enough, I can quote something from, a college or a institution where those things support my point. And that doesn't serve any purpose to me. I'd like to think that I'm speaking to people who are thinkers, or people who are observant and just like to connect dots. And for this, I really would say this is a lot of people who grew up in an era where there's a lot of conversation about going to school and how important it is to have a college degree. And then those of us that have found success in that way, maybe not conventionally, and now we're out, all of us are having kids, and we're trying to advise them on how they can be more successful, or how they can achieve or get to a point where they can support themselves. And I can say, honestly, when I speak to my children, especially, I'm a co-parent. So it's not just my experience, it's also the experience of the mothers of my children, and how we try to best guide our kids and give them an opportunity to pursue happiness. And I have kids who have went to college. I have kids that have that are still in college, some that have dropped out of college, some that are in more directed certificate programs that may go on to a 4-year university. But this is after they've already started with a trade, and now their studies are more focused, but they're still going to a college university that may have them, partaking in classes that don't really serve the purpose of their job field. They're just part of the money-making machine that is public and private universities. But I'll start with myself. I joined the military instead of going to college. And I joined the military and chose a trade because when I actually decided on a job field, it made sense to me to be in a situation where I was being trained to do that job. So because I had interest, because I wanted to do that, and because I knew that my training was going to be directed so I could perform that job in that function in that organization, it made sense, and it was easy for me to lock in and be a part of that because everything that I was doing was going to be geared towards me being able to do that job. There were no general education courses. Everything was focused on what are the skills required for me to be able to perform this function in this organization. And I'm talking about the United States military, the Navy. So all that made sense to me. It was easy for me to lock in, and I excelled. I mean, it was purposeful. It made sense. It was concise and right to the point. Everything that I was taught, I used. And to me, that makes the most sense. And I wasn't paying for that in the traditional sense. I mean, there was a commitment to my country. I'm a veteran, honorably discharged. I'd spent 10 years in the military, but it didn't cost me tens of thousands of dollars. I'm sure that there was a cost to the military to actually train me, and that I repaid that debt with my service. But what I gained is far more, has extended and paid off for me so far more than just my service to my country, like what I actually had to use to repay them for training me. I mean, I have a career that spans, over 20 years. And I've made, I can't even, I could try to calculate the amount of money that I've made compared to what I actually invested in my education. It's not even comparable, and it's not, I'm in the medical field. It's a reputable technological field. It's with all respect due, it translated from the military outside of the military. That's why I chose it. When I describe my career path to people, I say there are people who do my job who didn't get trained in the military, who went to college, and it may have cost them between $20,000 and $30,000 to get trained to do what I'm doing, and I got paid that amount of money to get trained to do what I'm doing, and I got a lot more experience. And I got the same, if not better, training doing what I'm doing, and more comprehensive, because it was in the military, and my obligation and the path that you have to take in the military before you can go to a specialized technical school gave me a clinical background that served me. It was priceless when I actually ended up doing my actual training in my technical job. I have a level of clinical experience that a lot of my contemporaries who got trained on the outside don't have, because it was necessary for me to do actual patient care before, and that's generalized nursing patient care, before I got into my actual field, which is, radiology. So, I mean, without even doing specifics, everything that I did in my life up in, as far as preparing for my career was purposeful. It all made sense in my head, and just, it wasn't just in my head, it all made sense and served a purpose to me and my bottom line as far as my career was concerned. And that's what I needed. College to me doesn't really do that. And it costs you money. And it doesn't guarantee, just because you spent $30,000 to $40,000 or between $20,000 to $40,000 for a 4-year degree, that you're going to get a job in the thing that you invested that $40,000 in, education wise, and the time. And a lot of these institutions, you're taking classes for the first 2 years that are general education, with a curriculum that, your electives aren't your real electives, because all of those things are chosen by the university for their merit, but they don't really make sense because, for example, I tried to go to college, or I went to college for a couple of years after I after I got out of the military. Working a full-time job and going to school is not for the faint of heart. It's very difficult, especially if you have a family. But when I'm enrolling for classes, and this is at a community college, you're enrolling for classes, and I have to take an elective, and I'm allowed to take a history, but the only histories that I can take for a degree in radiological sciences is Western civilization or U.S. history. I can't take African American history or African studies, a historical view of, how do I have an elective, and that elective has to be a history, but you limit the history that I can take to U.S. history? And I've been learning about U.S. history the whole time that I was in, from, elementary school all the way through high school. This is a college education that I'm paying for. It's an elective, and it's a history, stain or a history tint is the class that I need to take, but you're limiting whose history I can learn. And it actually doesn't have anything to do with my major. That to me it's like having to pay for paper towels. I can't even make up an example to show how ludicrous that sounds. It just does not make any sense. It is an elective. It's a class that is basically put there saying, this is a freebie. This is a class that you get to choose what you want to learn, right? So outside of your degree, there are these acceptable elective classes, that we're going to give you credit for, that we feel are worthy of this degree, right? That show, that have value to your, overall college experience. They're all college level classes. So it's not like, African American studies or African American history is, a class for Boo Boo the Fool, where Western Civ and U.S. history are, legitimate college classes. They're all in the same university. You're paying these professors to teach. You got college level text that you're teaching from. Like, there's no logical reason that I've ever heard or been given on why one is acceptable and one isn't, when neither of them are relevant to your degree path. They're an elective. So again, that's just one of the examples of why I feel like college is not worthless, but it just doesn't have the same value to me that directed training would have. But for some reason, and I'll get into that later, it means more in this economic system. And I hopefully I'm not getting off track. But again, I've always had the mindset that whatever I'm doing needs to actually directly contribute to my end goal, or else it's a waste of time. It's a waste of motion. It's a waste of energy. And when I hear these candidates and pundits and political people speaking about free education, I mean, free education makes sense, but if the free education is not leading to a purposeful workforce or technological advances for the country, or a better, more equipped, less impoverished society, then what good does that education do? It being free, So as I try to wrap all these things and tie them all together, if, let's say, college was free, right? That means that someone else is paying the bill, is paying these colleges the cost that students are not paying, right? And let's say that some of those costs are overinflated or are inflated, right? That these people are making money hand over fist, much more money than the product they're actually producing is worth. And that's an understatement. Even if it's free, and let's not talk about the cost, but let's just talk about the product. How many percentage, or what percentage of people that graduate with a bachelor's actually get a job where their major is actually a part of the job that they get when they graduate? From the numbers that I saw, and just from the number of people that I know who have a college degree that are unemployed or that are not working in the field that they went to college for, is enough to surmise that college is not the path to success, not conventionally. I heard something on a TV show where a person spoke about college in a way that made more sense, but then at the same time was totally asinine. And this person said that college to an employer, college degree to an employer, even if it's not, your degree is not in something that they're going to be able to utilize you for, college shows that you have a commitment, that you showed up somewhere on time, and completed a process for 4 years' time. So it basically showed a level of commitment and dedication, and that you could do all of these things consistently, and it basically is a model of the type of worker that you would be for them, right? Like it's an example, a sample size of who you are and what type of assets you would be to that company, which I get, right? I get that. And I can't say that that's faulty reasoning, but if I peel back a couple of layers and I just think about, like, why is this person obligated? And then why would they be obligated? Why are they obligated to the school journey? And then why are they obligated to the job that doesn't have anything to do with their school journey when they're finished? It isn't because, having a 4-year degree shows that you have a great work ethic, because there are a lot of ways to show that you have a great work ethic besides spending $40,000 on an education that you're not going to use. And that's for some people. I'm not, brushing a broad stroke, because there are some people who do get jobs with their majors. But I'm just saying, for the amount of people who don't and the money that they paid, I'm sure that it's definitely worth investigating as to how that money and that time could have been better spent. But I digress. And this is part of my larger point, speaking about our society, our economic system, what freedom means, capitalism, and how it actually all works together. I would argue that a person who has, if they did a 4-year degree at a private university, lived on campus, did all these things, they could spend upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 on a 4-year degree. If you went to a community college and then a private institution or a public or a state school, you could spend 3/4 of that, maybe half of that if you lived at home. But even graduating college, if you started at 18 and you ended at 22, the debt that you would incur going to school, you might start out before you get your first job, actually post a college degree. You could start out with, anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 to $100,000 of debt before you step foot into a job with the degree that you got. So most conscientious people know that they have to pay that debt. So you're damn right they're going to be dedicated to the job that they get, because they got a debt to pay. Not because they're, they've shown that they can show up to class and write papers and, do all of those things. They have $50,000 to $100,000 hanging over their head. And their entry level wage, we already know that the minimum wage is not enough to sustain people in the cost of living anywhere in the United States. Like, There are people who make 3 times the minimum wage that can't afford to live on their own. And that's not saying that they've made bad financial choices, like they've, spent beyond their means. It just costs that much to live as a single person with no children. And I promise I'm getting to my point. This is the cycle, right? The cycle of we're going to create debt in your life to tie you to the workforce and to create basically a subservient class of people. Now, you have people who are impoverished, who are unemployed. That's a certain section of society. But there are also people who have spent their time following the blueprint that's being pushed, the narrative that you need a college degree to succeed in America. But if your college degree is a signal to employers that you are a good candidate to have a job, and then if your college degree doesn't have to relate to the job that they're hiring you for, but it just shows that you can be committed. But if your commitment is not based off of your work ethic, but more based off of the fact that you've incurred a certain level of debt to get that degree, see how these things are fitting together? It has nothing to do with the college education. It has to do with putting you in a state of, I have to have this job no matter what it is because I have a debt to pay. You are now dependent on the system, and you're going to take whatever you can get based off of your means that you have outside of yourself. Like, of course, if you're well-to-do and your parents are able to pay for your college tuition and you don't come out of school owing any money, then you don't have the same debt obligation where, a major percentage of Americans do have that, even with student loans, even with scholarships. Like, you still have this debt. I mean, if school debt was not such a big thing, it wouldn't be a platform for people to run on, as far as tuition forgiveness and there being free education. So that's how big the epidemic is, because on a presidential level, that is one of the issues that people are using to base their platform on. So I say all of that to say capitalism requires debt. And I don't think any economic system that requires its participants to be in debt in order to flourish can be considered a great system. If fundamentally a poverty class is required for that system to flourish, if there's a wealth gap that is required for this system to flourish, you can't then say that that is a great system. It's a great system for the people that don't have to be a part of the poverty or the impoverished class, or the people that are working just to get by. It's not a great system for them, right? Capitalism lives off of the idea that of free markets, right? That you can start from nothing and get to a place of wealth and everybody has the opportunity to become a millionaire. when in reality you're living in a world and in a society and in a nation of finite resources. Just because the government can print money doesn't mean that that money is worth the paper that it's printed on. When you have inflation, a dollar today doesn't buy what a dollar bought 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So, what's the value in what it is that you're doing? And I'm just speaking on real world situations. Like, a lot of us aren't even taught growing up how to combat what's coming for us. We're learning from our parents, and our parents are just saying, be prepared to work. Work for what you got. Work for what you need. Right? The hack on the system is to not become a slave to the system. Resist the temptation to incur debt. Right? The longer you can stay out of debt, the further that you can build yourself financially, build a financial foundation. But the system even discourages that. And let me tell a story. When I tried to purchase my first home, I had zero debt. Like, literally, I had no incurred debt. I had purchased a used car when I first joined the Navy and got to my first duty station. It was, I think I bought it for about $10,000, maybe a little less, because it was a first time used car loan with my credit union. It had a great interest rate. Like, it just was something that even as a low ranking military member, I was able to pay it off. So by the time I went to purchase my first home, I did not use credit cards. I didn't have personal loans and things of that nature. I just didn't have any debt. I knew about credit, but I never really concerned myself with credit because, I'm trying to pay off whatever I owe. My credit rating was under 600. And that was simply because I didn't have any revolving credit lines. So for me to purchase a home, I was advised by my real estate person and that I should go out and get a secured credit card, make a couple charges on it, and carry a balance. So in essence, what this told me was for a company to loan me, $150,000, $200,000 to purchase a home, to show my credit worthiness, it wasn't as valuable to see because on your credit report, it shows your credit history. So you have my payment patterns, you have my on-time payments, how many late payments I made. You have a blueprint of how I handle debt, right? And that was not enough to show that I was worthy of borrowing or being given more money to purchase a home. What you needed to see is that I had actual debt currently. Like, not that I paid off debt, but that I actually had debt. That increased my credit worthiness. The fact that I owed more money that I hadn't paid off yet. That makes absolutely no sense. Not in the common sense area. It makes no sense. What it makes sense is if you're under the pressure and the obligation of owing someone, you're more than likely, no one wants to have debt collectors chasing them around. So if you owe, then you're more likely to feel obligated, and you're going to make these payments, and you're going to basically contribute to the system and the cycle. You know, you're going to be part of the workforce because now you owe money. It incentivizes debt, and more so incentivizes participation in the conventional way of participating in the system. You know, debt, repayment, interest payments, taxes, the overall workforce, right? When you owe money, it's hard to be selective in your employment choices, because no matter what you choose to do, you got to pay back that money. So it doesn't even really matter if you're doing what you went to college to learn how to do, because you still have debt regardless of whether you get hired in that field or not. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I have to speak about it because, you know, when you hear these conversations, nobody's putting this shit together. They're just reading off these obscure statistics. Okay, yeah, if you give us free education, how does that benefit us besides us not having debt? It doesn't get you a job. I guarantee you, if they give out free education, education is going to lose its value for employers. They're not going to look at that bachelor degree the same if you didn't pay for it. And not like nobody knows. These employers don't know if you're a scholarship student or not, right? Not that you know of. You don't know if they have access to your financial records when they're looking up you. They could be pulling your credit report and seeing whether you have, you know, outstanding student loans and things of that nature that you're paying on. You don't know if they're doing that. But if it's free, and that's a nationwide thing, it's a nationwide policy that nobody is paying for their degree unless your degree is directly related to your, like, as a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer. Like, you have to have a college degree and certifications in that field to do that job. There are a lot of jobs that people are filling that they have a college degree that has nothing to do with the job. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the phenomena of you spending a certain amount of money to invest in a degree that you're not going to use except for the cachet that you have a degree. You know, to me, if your degree if your degree is not in what I'm hiring you for, I could give a shit. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't make you more desirable as an employee, because that degree doesn't add to my bottom line. And I have just as much a chance of finding someone without a college degree that has a great work ethic, just as I do finding a person with a college degree that has a shitty work ethic. Going to class and going to work is not the same thing. And it's just amazing that you never hear people talking about these things and connecting these dots when they're having these political, economic, and social conversations. And I feel like it's a disservice to future generations. Like, again, I'm in no way saying that I'm anti-education, because I think we need to be educated, and I think it needs to be directed. But the price of freedom, right? Other people will say, well, if you take away people's choices and you tell them that they can only do blah, 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 then they're not free. Okay, you're right. A person should be able to go to school and study and learn and do anything that they want to do, right? But now when that person spends 4 to 6 years, undergrad and postgrad, undergrad and graduate degrees, and then they get out here in the workforce and they're, over $100,000 in debt, but can't get a job and refuses to get a job because they understand that they've invested 4 to 6 years of their life going to college, and they refuse to take a job that's not part of their major. They are the same financial drain on the economy as a person who went to high school and can't get a job. In fact, they're probably more because they actually have a debt equivalent to some mortgages that they have to pay on. I teach my kids, listen, chase your dreams and support them. Chase your dreams and support yourself. Do what you got to do. Having a college degree doesn't make you successful. It doesn't even make you profitable. It just makes you dependent. It makes you a participant in the system. It makes you you're a battery in the matrix. You're a person who contributes to the financial stability of a market that doesn't serve you, because these universities get paid, these companies who are hiring college graduates based off their need to pay off their college debt. They just need somebody there to labor in their company. You're paying taxes to a system that doesn't support you. And all of this under the guise of freedom and the lottery ticket mentality that you have the ability to be rich, when wealth and resources are finite all over the world, and the distribution of said wealth, real wealth, these numbers, $1 million today is not the same as $1 million, 5-10 years ago. It's not the same. I lived in Virginia and now I live in California. Real estate prices, is the quickest way to see how much money or how much your dollars really are or aren't worth. If a house that I buy in Virginia, and not even necessarily in the most desirable place, in a median level place, a house that I purchased in a median level place in Virginia cost me $300,000. In California, that's $800,000. But I guarantee you, the amount of money that you make doing a job in Virginia and the same job in California, the percentage increase in real estate prices is not the same percentage increase in wage prices that you have from Virginia to California. I guarantee you that. And I'm talking about everything is more expensive in California. And I'm speaking about the same level of economic, I don't know what the word is, saturation, like the same level of economic affluence, middle class to middle class. Middle class in California, in certain areas of California, middle class is, a $800,000 home to Virginia, a $300,000 home. That's a ridiculous amount of money. Like, what a nurse can afford in Virginia is nothing compared to what a nurse can afford in California. Like, you're not getting paid the same, and you're not getting paid the same on the same increment level. The cost of living is not comparable. They're not like inflation and this free market and the way that they manipulate prices and taxes for everyone does not allow for people to actually participate in our economy fair and equitably. I saw something on the news the other day that said the median income to be a homeowner in California is almost $200,000. How many people as a single person or even as a combined income anywhere, net or gross, $200,000? That means two people are making almost six figures. I don't even understand how more people aren't like, I don't want to say outraged, but just like flabbergasted at like what it costs to live outside in real life. Now imagine if those two people, because nobody comes out of college making $100,000 a year. Imagine if those two people have school loans that they're still paying on. So in addition to your debt that you have to be a homeowner and have a family and things of that nature, you both also have between $80,000 to $100,000 in school loans that you're paying for to get that job. Like, it's astronomical. And it's if people don't understand the hypocrisy of what's going on and how this system is eating us alive, and then think that they actually have viable alternatives, like everybody's just trying to keep a piece of their pie a little bit longer and a little bit stronger. And I mean, real change is going to require a level of sacrifice or a level of engagement that I don't think that this country is actually even ready for, because people still think they can get that winning lotto ticket. People think that they can be Jeff Bezos, and there's nothing wrong with thinking that, but the economy is feeding off of that. They're feeding off of your desire or your thought that you can be Bill Gates. And they are creating a market that makes you chase that even when you are in a position where you're not going to get it. If you work 9 to 5, unless you're doing something entrepreneurial or you actually win the lotto or you have the disposable income to invest outside of your full-time, 40-hour-a-week job, or you're working more than 40 hours a week, and again, you're taking your disposable income and investing it in something that's going to pan out long-term, these things are not realistic goals. And I don't even think they should be. But again, I can't control what everybody thinks, but if we don't see that capitalism in its current form is no better than any of these other economic, political, economic, social, politically driven economic systems in the world, whether it be socialism, communism, Marxism, any of these things that are being governed by a level of individual that simply wants to maintain economic and political power over the masses. A corrupt government that's a part of a quote unquote free market and capitalism is no better than a corrupt government with communism. They're both deluding their constituents to believe that this is in their best interest. Just capitalism uses the fantasy and the fallacy that everybody can be a millionaire, and that millionaire status is going to make you economically viable, and you'll be able to provide for your family in a way that you wouldn't in any other nation. And that's not true. Having $1 million doesn't do anything. It barely even buys you a house in California. Because a $400,000 house in Virginia is $1 million house in California. So, what are we actually talking about here? I think we need to talk about real solutions. I think we need to talk about speaking to our children, creating a legacy that is not dependent on the system. Understand what's going on, and don't let yourself fall into the trap of debt. Debt enslaves you. Resist it at all costs. And it's hard, right? Because some things you can't afford to wait and pay cash for. They took away layaway. You can't, you have to have credit. You have to have credit to get into, you have to have a certain level of credit to rent. You have to have a certain level of credit to get into the Air Force. You have to have a certain level of credit. Like, they're making it to where all walks of life, if you don't have credit, that you can't participate. And the way that you get good credit is to put yourself into debt. And it's something that shouldn't be ignored. So I unfortunately have spent a lifetime in that system. And, my experiences have guided what I've tried to teach my children. And hopefully, they're able to learn the lesson quicker than I did with my guidance, and maybe what they teach their kids or how they prepare themselves so they can, teach their kids and give to their kids a different type of opportunity. Hopefully it gets there. But the way shit is going, it's only going to get worse. And seek out the solution. If the game is detrimental, playing it even to win doesn't serve a purpose. Anybody that's seen the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick back in the day, the at the end, the message was the best way or the only way to win the game is to not play it. That's where we're at, individually and collectively. The best way to win the game is to not play it at all. And it may make you look crazy, but I'd rather look crazy and not be than not look crazy and be crazy. And people are depressed. People are suicidal. People are stressed out, full of anxiety, exhausted, literally working themselves to death playing the game. And I raise my hand. I'm one of them. I work 80 hours a week. It is what it is. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Truth Lies Here podcast. Please like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next time. Bye.